Today, Ryan is a leading voice in TRT HRT Peptide Therapy, hormone optimization, biohacking, and men's health, with over 20 years of real world hormone experience. This episode is about real experience, real science, and real consequences, and how to rebuild your health, your business, and identity from ground zero. So, welcome to another episode of Luxury Unplugged podcast, where luxury meets spirituality, where we explore people's success stories who've had the ups and downs and yet managed to live a life full circle. Let's get started. When you have lost millions and you're used to making wealth, what is that lesson that you would like to give to our viewers, to founders, that about wealth building?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I would say motivation, perseverance, but also my business partner has always said, turn square corners, which means don't take shortcuts, right? So it's important to be very motivated, work hard. It's going to be the hardest work you've ever done in your entire life. But if you do it right and stay with it, then it'll be worth it in the end. And do everything the right way. Turn square corners, as my partner always says.
Rebuilding trust, especially when you have seen it all, done it all, lost it all, or in your environment again when you have come from certain downfalls. What's your one tip that, okay, this is the way you can possibly start gaining trust again?
Fortunately for me, like, my story actually did make people trust me because like I said, so I would say this: spin your story so that you can say, hey, look, I made this mistake, but I learned from it. That's a major thing that I did, that I would say. Instead of just, getting out of prison and curling up in a fetal position in the corner of the room and saying, I did this wrong thing. Address that you did something wrong. Admit that I'm accountable for those actions, and I am accountable for the actions. But then present to people what you learned from that and why you're a better person today, and how, and a lot of people resonate with that. They resonate with the second chance. They resonate with the, I made a mistake, here's what I learned, this is why I'm going to do it better this time. And people resonate with that. And surprisingly, a lot of people are willing to overlook your past.
Beautiful. I think it's not only about brand building, it's also about being authentic through and through, telling your story very authentically. I think that really helps. Welcome to another amazing episode of Luxury Unplugged, where luxury meets spirituality. Now, today's journey is about somebody who's had an underground empire to legitimate hormone optimization empire. It is raw, it is rare, it is deeply relevant to where conversations around health and business and redemption are heading. Are you interested? Would you like to know if somebody has gone to prison and probably he's gone through the entire cycle of the ups and downs of the life and how he's come out with $1 million empire? Let's get started. Welcome, Ryan. Welcome to the show.
Hey, great. Thank you. That was a great introduction. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Ryan, whatever I have read about you, whatever I understand, I still am very intrigued about your story. So why don't you take us through your life before the prison and after it, and how you're making your $1 million empire?
Sure. I totally, like, when I got out of prison, I also made the decision that I was going to embrace what I did. And I was just going to tell people, be very honest with people and very upfront about everything. And just like you said, like, I've seen one of the business mistakes that people make is that they think that they have to hold everything, that their business models and their plans are secretive. And if anybody else learns their secret, then they'll steal it and go make millions of dollars and leave them. And then when in reality, that's not true. Like, it's not only about the having an idea, it's about the execution. And the execution to bring that to market is incredibly difficult, and most people can't do it. So I don't have a problem telling everybody my ideas and giving everybody my information. And if you can execute it better than me, then that's good for you. But I don't think anybody can execute it better than I can. So with that belief, I'm an open book. Like, we'll tell everybody our plans. Here's our plans. Here's exactly what we're going to do. I think that I'm going to be the best at executing this. So yeah, sure.
And
sure. I guess it all started, I now know, after all this experience over the last few decades, I now know that I had low testosterone my whole life. So it starts when I guess I was 13 years old. I was picked on for being so skinny. I didn't want to get picked on for being skinny, so I started lifting weights, and I never looked back. Even though I started lifting weights, I still did not mature like my peers. I had to put twice the amount of effort in the gym to get half the results of my peers. Right? So I was still I was small, I was fatigued, I was lethargic, I was depressed. I even got called a lazy piece of crap by adults just because I had to take naps every day, and I just wasn't motivated or ambitious. So again, I didn't mature like my peers. Couldn't even grow facial hair until I started taking testosterone. So at 23 years old, I knew something was wrong, something wasn't normal with me. So I went to my doctors. I asked about testosterone. They said, no, there's no way that somebody in their early 20s can have low testosterone, so we're not even going to check it. So they wouldn't even test it for me just to see what it was. So at this age, I decided to take my health into my own hands, and I started a regimen on my own of testosterone. Well, it dramatically improved my quality of life to the point where I live two completely different worlds, two completely different lives. It turns out that I was very energetic and ambitious and confident. I just needed the right amount of testosterone. So to kind of put it into an understanding, I worked out hard because I was so skinny. I didn't want to be called skinny. But very quickly, I hyper responded to the testosterone. I put on about 34 pounds of muscle and 100 pounds on my bench press. Now, I don't want people to think that it's just about muscle, about building muscle mass, because there's much, much more. That's one of its functions, and muscle is very beneficial, right? Muscle mass improves metabolic disorder. It's the most insulin-resistant tissue, so we can reverse diabetes with muscle tissue, and it's the only tissue that can grow that can increase our metabolism. So muscle mass in men and women is very important, right, for this. So not only did I build muscle, but I also had energy. I didn't need to take naps anymore. My brain fog was lifted. I was confident. I wasn't depressed anymore. I lived a much better life. I want to give you an idea. Another one of the major changes is the way that the world around me treated me, the way society treated me. So, for instance, now suddenly, I was instantly respected, and people wanted to befriend me. I had people who just wanted to be my friend now. I would walk into a bar and every head would turn. Right? I would walk through that bar and the crowd would part in front of me. Right? So I was in college and I had a job as a plumber. I hated that job. I was terrible at it. I wasn't going to be a plumber. Right? It was just my summer job. And my boss, after I started taking testosterone, my boss suddenly gave me a raise for no better reason than I stood before him looking stout and confident. Right? So the world treats you differently when you have this, not only do you look the part physically, but also you have this virile vigor, right? And you're confident, and the world just treats you differently.
Right. I love that part, that aspect of what you just said. If you stand tall and you're confident, the world treats you differently. It is so true.
Yeah.
But did that involve you to go to the levels of taking testosterone outside and testing out for that? Is that something you would recommend people do that?
Yeah, I would. So what we're going to learn throughout this is that testosterone is a fundamental foundational. Testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, they're all fundamental foundational hormones. They exist in every single vertebrate. They exist in a lot of plants. They even exist in some bacteria, right? So they're fundamental. They're evolutionary signals. They're metabolic and neurochemical signals as well. You need all these for the brain. Estrogen promotes the production of serotonin. Testosterone promotes the production of dopamine. Both estrogen and testosterone improve the receptors, increase the receptors for oxytocin. So all of these neurotransmitters that give us a good sense of well-being and make us feel love and emotion are they're produced and governed by these hormones, by these base foundational hormones, right? So what we're learning in today's society as well is that with the sedentary lifestyles, right? Because we're not hunters and gatherers anymore. Sedentary lifestyles and environmental toxins, they have been proven, absolutely unequivocally proven environmental toxins that are endocrine disruptors, and they're disrupting the amount of testosterone, estrogen, and sometimes their phytoestrogens act as extra estrogens. So we have this imbalance of too much estrogen and low testosterone in some cases, not in all the cases, but this dysregulation is causing major problems. So hormone replacement therapy can put everything in the right balance and give you adequate amounts of everything. So another thing we're going to learn here is that if I want to impart any knowledge on people today is that testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone especially, has been demonized, right? It's been stigmatized and demonized unfairly. Testosterone there are no risks. It is not dangerous at all in therapeutic doses. We have been misinformed through a fear-mongering machine for the last few decades that testosterone can be dangerous and for men and women. Women need to be on testosterone as well. It's like one of the biggest bouts of misinformation is that testosterone is a male hormone, estrogen's a female hormone, and that's just ridiculous. We have them in different amounts, but testosterone is vital to females. Females' most dominant sex steroid is testosterone. Females have 10 times more testosterone than they have estrogen in their body. It looks different on the blood test because the units are different, right? Women typically have like 100 to 200 picograms per milliliter, and testosterone is measured in nanograms per deciliter. When you normalize those units, there's 10 times more testosterone. So it's females' most dominant sex steroid, and they need it. It's absolutely vital to females as well. So females for HRT need to be on testosterone as well. And it's very, very beneficial. There's no risks. It is not dangerous. Every single risk factor for testosterone and estrogen has been debunked, right? There is no risk factors. It's just been this massive stigmatization and demonization unfairly through some very poorly run studies. And there's been a fear-mongering machine that has just created this stigmatization to one of the most beneficial medications in the history of medications, that being testosterone and hormone replacement therapy in general for men and women.
Yes. So when you say that it has been demonized, you do talk about it. It's perfectly okay to go ahead and take it as a medication. So, but it has to be going through the proper process and flow. And I would like to understand from you, like, how did you get into it? I understand the benefits of it that you already got immediately. But then when you went through the process, what was your, the cycle of your ups, and then finally it just all went away for you? What really happened?
Yeah, good. Yeah, so that's a good lead-in for the rest of the story. I appreciate that. A lot of times, like, I get sidetracked and then we never bring it back to the rest of the story, so people get confused. So yeah, let me continue on. So now that I had optimized myself with testosterone, right? I had to learn. I've always been a science guy, so I happened to be in college for biochemistry at the time. So I started to read voraciously, and I tailored my degree to the study of hormones. So I was learning about it in school, and I also just read on my own, and I couldn't put the information down. So pretty soon I got good. I really understood hormones, and I really got good at helping other people. So people would come to me and say, I've seen the dramatic change you've made in your life. How did you do that? So I said, well, let me show you. Now, at this time, we couldn't do that legally. There was no way doctors were going to prescribe it, right? The government, the medical community became these gatekeepers, again, of one of the most beneficial medications in the history of medications. This medication that is just massively beneficial. We'll go over other benefits too. I've seen it get people off of blood pressure medications, off of cholesterol medications. I've seen it reverse diabetes, reverse metabolic disorder. People lose massive amounts of weight on it. So it's not only the sense of well-being, the energy, but also medical benefits, real benefits, right? So I see it get people off of SSRIs because, again, testosterone and estrogen increase dopamine and serotonin. So testosterone and estrogen should be a frontline treatment for depression over SSRIs, which artificially increase just serotonin, right? And you need a balance of all of the neurotransmitters, not just serotonin, right? So the hormones are a more natural, better way to do that. And so I see it get people off of pain medications because both testosterone and estrogen are systemically anti-inflammatory, and they help improve joint pain. It's just like there's so many benefits, right? So we couldn't get it through the medical community, so I had to do it on the black market, underground. I had to nail down supply chains, and I started to understand how to provide these testosterone and testosterone derivatives to people. Over time, I started helping people, right? And when people showed me the admiration, the gratitude, and the appreciation for helping them, when I started to dramatically improve other people's quality of life, that drove a dose response, right? Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, which drove a passion. That's another, those neurotransmitters is the feeling of passion, what we call passion. It's just a huge uptake of dopamine, right? So that drove my passion, and I just dove in. Like at this time, I finally was able to find, like all of us in our early 20s, we're not really sure where we fit into the world, right? We're kind of confused. We don't know what we want to do exactly. We don't know where we fit in. So, but this made my life clear. Like, I could do this. I was good at this. I could benefit people, and this was my niche. This was my thing where I could actually be a part of society. So I continued to help people, and one day, one of my clients told me about this online source forum where people were selling testosterone and derivatives online. And he said to me, you have better prices than these people, and you have more knowledge about how to really help people. I think you could do well on the site. You should go check it out. So naturally, I went home and I researched to check out this website. And I realized that I could do this. I can beat the prices on here, and I'm better at this than the rest of the people. So it was an arduous process. I had to create a website, and I had to take all these steps, and it was an arduous process. I didn't know how to create a website, so I had to get somebody to help me do that. But after this arduous process, I was able to actually become an official source on this forum. So all I had was a duffel bag full of testosterone and its derivatives and a laptop, and I was just going to try to bring this online, bring what I was doing online. Now, there was 1,000 other sources on this website, on this forum, but so how was I going to stick out doing this? So I also, during this time, I only was a lab tech in a local hospital, right? So, and I didn't make much money. I made $270 a week, which is very little money. I couldn't even survive on that much. The only reason I wasn't homeless is because luckily I lived in my grandmother's house, right? Otherwise I wouldn't have been able to afford a place to live. So I was hoping to make a little bit of extra money. I was also I wanted to help people. I've always, again, it's drove a passion to help people. But I also was hoping to make a little bit of money. So I was hoping that I could make $200 or $300 extra a week, because then I would be comfortable, right? I didn't know if I could make that much money. I thought it was a little overzealous, right? So all I did is I was one of 1,000 other sources. How do I stick out? All I did was start to implement some strategies and some pretty simple good business practices that nobody else was using on the site at the time. So again, when I started implementing strategies, the business just blew up. It absolutely blew up. So like I said, I was hoping that I could make $200 or $300 extra a week. I thought that was overzealous though. And within 6 months, I was making $21,000 a week. And then it just got bigger. I was making $30,000 a week, then $40,000, then $50,000. Towards the end, I was making $100,000 a week. And there was a few weeks in there when I made $500,000 in a week. So, so it just blew up, and I became I had to scale this enterprise to a large degree. I had operations all over the United States. I had shipping and chemist operations, because we actually made the product from raw material.
Right.
Shipping operations, and an army of money collectors throughout the entire country. And we ran one of the largest underground testosterone and derivatives operations in U.S. history.
Right.
It,
How did that fall happen for you? And then
yeah.
how did you go ahead and actually build up your system again?
Yeah. Sure. So in 2015,
Ultimate way then.
yeah. In 2015, I was indicted by Operation Cyber Juice. So it turns out that they started an investigation in 2014, I guess. And then in 2015, I was finally indicted. I lived in a penthouse in Manhattan, and the DEA came and raided the house, pointed guns at my head and everything. And then I was arrested. I was sentenced to 78 months or 6.5 years in prison. I went in prison. I used my time wisely. I read voraciously about business, and I got a mentor, and we wrote a business plan to do this legally and legitimately. We wrote a business plan for a HRT clinic, and we spent a lot of time. We spent probably 18 months writing this business plan and really thinking out everything. So when I got out of prison, I executed on this business plan, and what did my story get me? What did the story allow me? Well, what it did is, remember I told you that the medical community stigmatized and demonized testosterone, right? So there's a fundamental foundational problem with the education of providers regarding hormones, right? They do not learn about this in medical school. It is not in their curriculum. The little information they do learn is antiquated notions and dogma from decades ago, which is why it was so stigmatized and demonized. It still is to a degree, but it's getting much better today. But this was, again, this was like 15 years ago, so it was worse. It was much worse. So
I need to stop you here before you move ahead.
Sure.
When you said that you were in prison for 6.5 years and you took 18 months to prepare a business plan. Now that takes some kind of a determination, persistence, and loads of other things to do that in a prison. Like, you're already under tremendous pressure. So how did you cope with all of that and still manage to actually think in the right direction?
That's a great question. I decided early in my going into prison that I was going to do this the right way, and I was going to use the time wisely, and I was going to do everything I did was going to be for the future. The prison system is pretty awful in that there's a reason, especially for people like my situation, where it's just a nonviolent drug dealer, essentially. People do this and break the, I always say this, I knew I was breaking the law. I knew it was illegal, and I knew it could come to prison time. And I'm accountable for those actions, right? So I did my time, and I understand that I broke the law. When people break the law like that, there's a reason for it, and it's usually because they don't know what else to do, right? And in my case, like I did have some addiction issues when I was younger, so I was kind of unable to really grasp society and figure out the economy and how to make something of my life and how to become a gainful member of society. Well, I figured out a way to do it this way, right? So going to prison is kind of a function of not knowing what else to do. And it's risky. Like, if I was in medical school or something, then I never would have done that, because then I would have risked this promising future that I have. But if you don't have a promising future and you don't know what else to do to make a living, to put a roof over your head and food on your table, then you're willing to take higher risks, right? So people who go to prison, they just didn't, like not all of it. There's some people who need to be in prison, but there's also a large subset of the prison population that just doesn't know what else to do. And prison doesn't change that. There's not great education. There's not teaching people a different way to live. There's no, they do have these programs, but they're terrible. They're not well run. They don't actually teach people many things. So, and this is why the rate of recidivism is so high, right? When you go into prison, most people go back because there's no incentive to learn, and people don't understand the value of learning how to do something else, or learning how to do things the right way. They don't understand that. They don't make that connection, and they don't understand that education, and perseverance can actually change this, right? So, and again, they don't have education in the prisons. There's no system. Like, it's very, very difficult to go to college from prison. Not impossible, but it's very difficult. And they don't have educational programs. So anyways, I made a conscious decision early on in prison that I was going to use the time wisely, and I was going to work hard to be prepared for when I got out. And not many people do that, because I said there's no incentivization. People don't understand the value of that. So not many people do that. But so every book I read was for the future, was a business so I could understand business and how to run my own business. And then when I got the mentor who has built many businesses before, you meet people in prison, and I met somebody who's built many, many very successful businesses before. And so we just started laying out a business plan. He liked the idea of what I wanted to do, and we started laying out the business plan. And he's actually my co-founder today.
Okay.
We still work together.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess that was it. So again, what did my, my past get me? What did my story get me? It's the testosterone is demonized, hormones are demonized, and then therefore nobody studies them. The medical community doesn't use them. They don't study them. They don't learn about it, right? And they certainly have no experience with it because they never prescribe it. It's demonized. So I was able to, on a very vast level, I was able to guide. I must have had over 20,000 customers. So I successfully guided over 20,000 people through the use of hormones. That's what I did in my business. People asked me, well, what should I do? I gave them suggestions. I got blood work. I saw how people responded to different protocols. I changed protocols if something happened, and I learned from over 20,000 people how to really dial people in and really do this right, so people are feeling their best and looking their best, and they're the most healthy. Right. And nobody else has done that, because I've just been in a unique position to get in this at a very young age, to have this massive empire where I had the opportunity to guide over 20,000 people through the use of these hormones. And now I can come out and utilize all that experience and knowledge in a legal, legitimate way.
Right.
Now, right? And no other doctor in the entire world has had that much experience, because again, it's all stigmatized. It's stigmatized in every country, because all the countries share all the medical information, right? So the World Health Organization and all of the medical communities have kind of equally stigmatized testosterone and estrogen and progesterone. So I've almost done this more than just about anybody in the world. I've just seen it on a much more vast level. So then it becomes a story of redemption. Now I can utilize all this knowledge, this expert knowledge and experience that I've aggregated over the decades, and we can set up a business to do this right, to do it legally, legitimately, but also more effectively than anybody else, because I just know how to use these compounds better than anybody else.
Right.
So here we go. Now I own H4M, which is hormones. We were Hormones for Me. We're rebranding right now to H4M, hormonesforme.com, and we're doing this. I partner with providers who share the vision, who understand how to do this the right way. We can pick and choose our providers that know how to do this the right way. And now, again, it's a story of redemption. We can utilize all the knowledge I had, plus health tech. We're bringing in really customizable solutions for people, right? We can use genetics. We have genetic testing. We can use your genetics. We can use your blood work. We can use your personal history, your medical history. We can wrap all that data up and really, depending on your specific genetics and your specific situation, we can customize these protocols to you. It's very important that it's customized. I always say this. I always say that I could give the same protocol to 1,000 different people and I'd get 1,000 different results, because everybody's different. Right? So it's not about putting everybody on a cookie cutter solution, or putting everybody at a certain blood range or on a certain protocol or at a certain dosage. It's about developing a methodology to figure out what yields the best results for each individual. Right? Right. And that's where we specialize, where most other companies don't have that figured out.
I have an interesting question for you at this point of time. Sure. Do you think there was some sort of a spirituality instinct that happened within you to be that determined within the prison and then execute that plan in such a way? Of course, you've been lucky as well, or fortunate enough to have that kind of a business partner, meeting him right in the prison, right? So it's turn of events for you also. So did somewhere spirituality play a part in your roller coaster ride so far?
Yeah, I suppose it did. Yeah, I mean, I guess I did. I guess I did, like, pray a lot and try to figure out what am I supposed to do, and how do I do this? And there's another, I don't know if you call this spirituality, but there's another, there's an interesting, like, if we want to talk about, I've studied a lot of neurobiology because I'm fascinated by human behavior, right? So if we want to look at something in terms of dopamine is the motivation neurotransmitter, right? So you get your motivation from dopamine. And motivation is another word for dopamine uptake, or so is passion, So is drive. Like we have these words that just mean that you have a dopamine uptake, right? Dopamine is produced when we've been to when we've had other, dopamine wants to get more dopamine and the other neurotransmitters. So when you have an uptake of serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, or dopamine, then dopamine tells you, go do that action that got you these neurotransmitters, because that's what you're trying to do. And we get these neurotransmitters, we produce them every time we help our own survival or the survival of our species. We produce these neurotransmitters. It's an evolutionary mechanism for survival, right? Like you get rewarded when you do something to help yourself survive or the survival of your species. So when you help people, you get these huge dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin uptakes, right? Now when you have that, when you've had all these uptake of these neurotransmitters, dopamine says, go do the actions to get that again, because that's what dopamine does. Go do the things. And if you're getting these neurotransmitters from helping other people survive or helping your own survival, then that's a positive thing, right? Essentially, you're actually addicted to these neurotransmitters. Cause you to be addicted, not in a bad way, just go do the things that gave us those neurotransmitters, right? So when I was helping thousands and thousands of people, when I was wealthy because I was making so much money, I had a lot of dopamine and oxytocin and serotonin at that time. So now when I lose everything, I still have that memory of what it was like, and my body, my dopamine still says, go do the things to get you back there, right? So you can only have willpower, as what they say, or motivation to do something that you've experienced before, right? And that's another reason why I always say, like, especially people who have metabolic disorder and have some problem with their metabolism and are obese their whole life, they don't have the willpower. And a lot of people say, well, you should have willpower to go lose weight, but they don't. Willpower is dopamine, and it comes from having experienced it before. If you've never been in shape and been in skinny, then you don't have any dopamine to go do it because you've never been there. You never experienced it, right? So we have dopamine helps us go get things that we've experienced before. And I think that was a major thing. I had been wealthy. I had been successful. I had experienced what it was like to help 20,000 people, and I wanted to be there again.
Right.
And the thing that changed is I knew I had to do this legally, legitimately. And so I just put my head down and worked to get back to where I was, but in the right way this time, to really be able to help people on a massive scale, legally and legitimately. So I think that had a lot to do with it.
I think you've added just another flavor to the way we talk about motivation and inspiration on this channel, because you are putting it right in the definitions of hormones, right?
Yeah.
It is dopamine.
Yeah.
Motivation is dopamine.
It's just another word for dopamine.
Exactly, it is exactly that. That's how you feel it in your body. And you're exactly right on also the fact that you have to feel it first to want to experience it again.
Exactly.
And if you haven't done it, you don't know what it feels like, so you don't have the inclination towards it. So you have your own way of, finding your path. It may not be spirituality route, but it is the path of, I want to do this because I feel like successful and I'm good at it and now I'm grounded. Probably that's what I'm guessing from understanding and talking to you.
Yeah.
Now, yes, go ahead.
No, I mean, certainly that there was some sort of spirituality. Like I am a man of God, so like a lot of, that had a lot to do. I tried to kind of walk in those footsteps as well, but I'm also a scientist, so I like to explain things. Right. This is, these are the neurochemicals, the biochemical reactions that were occurring for a certain behavior. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So now I have like a ton of rapid round questions for you.
Sure.
Just answer quickly, whatever comes to your mind, very quickly. They could be controversial as well. All right. So, are steroids actually safer than how modern medicine prescribes hormones today?
Yeah, so the word steroid is stigmatized unfairly, right? Steroid is just a class of a drug. It's just because it's a ketone, right? And not all of them are ketones. So, I mean, it's just like a class of a chemical structure, right? But the word steroid, especially anabolic steroid, just has people think, oh, that's bad. Those are dangerous. Well, no, it's just, anabolic just means muscle building, which is very positive, as we went over earlier. Muscles reverse diabetes. They're the most insulin insensitive tissue. It improves your metabolism. So building muscle is very important for health. Right. So anabolic just means muscle building, and steroid is just a class of drug. Prednisone's a steroid. Estradiol's a steroid. I'm trying to think. There's so many other steroids. Androstenedione. There's so many steroids that they're just important hormones within your body. Right. So when the first thing I would comment on there to what you just said is the word steroid is unfairly stigmatized. Right. And it's just a class of drugs. So. And testosterone is a steroid. It's an anabolic steroid, right? But it's also a fundamental foundational hormone. So it's not a bad thing to be a steroid. Like I said, prednisone's a steroid, cortisol is a steroid. They're not bad. They're just stigmatized. The word itself has a negative connotation, and it shouldn't. So testosterone is a steroid. Some of the other derivatives are steroids. Estradiol is a steroid, but they're vitally important, and they're not dangerous when used in therapeutic levels. They're not dangerous at all, and they're only beneficial. And I think it's important that we debunk the myth that they're risky, and there could be risks, and they could. The risk of cancer has been completely debunked. There's no evidence that there's any risk of cancer. For testosterone, the risk of prostate cancer is debunked. There's no evidence that there's any risk. For testosterone, there used to be a black box warning on testosterone saying it could increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. That has been completely debunked. In fact, the opposite. Testosterone is cardioprotective, and it reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease. When used in therapeutic doses, these things are massively beneficial. And again, one of the most beneficial medications in the history of medications.
So why do you think doctors are afraid of hormones, steroids, testosterone, other things?
Yeah, it comes from a lot of factors. Like a lot of these things coalesce to create this massive demonization and stigmatization of, again, one of the most beneficial medications in the history of medications. So several things coalesced. One of them, believe it or not, was the 1990 Steroid Control Act. So back in the late 80s, the politicians were running on the platform of the war on drugs. I don't know, you remember that? The war on drugs?
Yeah.
So the politicians were just, it's the age-old technique of make the people afraid of something and offer a solution to it, right? That's how you get elected. So they were talking about drugs they were talking a lot about cocaine and other drugs, right? And they were saying these things are dangerous and they're causing major problems in our society. If you elect us, we'll do something about it, right? They offered a solution. So at the time, they were just anything that looked like a drug, they were just controlling and then they increased the prison sentences for everybody. So they're just throwing people in prison, and that was their solution. Control everything that looks like a drug and put people in prison for it.
Right.
So testosterone got wrapped up in this. It got wrapped up with heroin, cocaine, ketamine, like all this other stuff. It kind of just got balled up and pushed into this, like it was a drug like those, even though testosterone is the only controlled substance that's naturally found in your body. Right.
Right.
So when you control something, you make it difficult, if not impossible, to research. So now it can't really be researched on humans. So it became controlled in the 1990 Steroid Control Act. So now scientists can't research it because it's controlled substance, and now it's stigmatized. It has this stigma. And now there's extra scrutiny on providers, on doctors for prescribing it because it's a controlled substance. It started to be considered possibly addictive, and it's not addictive. You need it. It's a natural hormone in your body. You need it, right? So it just was unfairly characterized through that. Plus, there was this whole, I don't know if you remember the early 90s, the steroids in baseball. That was actually a big part of it getting controlled, there was a couple, Ben Johnson in the 80s, he was a Canadian sprinter, and he won the gold medal, and then it was found out that he tested positive for steroids. So the whole world went up in arms saying, oh, these steroids are cheating elements. And they got labeled as these cheating things that people use to cheat. And it just got this negative stigma. The whole world was kind of looking at these things in a negative light. So, plus...
I have a question here.
Yeah.
Do you think is it fair for people to be using it during sports, during international sports, and sort of getting away with it?
So when we look at, so let's look at it in this light. Let's look at
People are using it and some people are not, right?
and almost, and in reality, almost everybody uses it. There's ways to get around the testing in sports. So it's like people are able to get around it. And in baseball, during the time when it was when they found out these players were using it, and they were like, oh my gosh, they're cheating, and they were up in arms. But during that time, it was the time that Sammy Sosa and Barry Bonds were going for their home run derbies, and they were just knocking it out of the park every single night, and it was incredibly exciting. These two were fighting for the home run championships, and it was incredibly exciting, and nobody has watched baseball more than during this time. Everybody was riveted. The entire world was riveted to see when these guys were going to knock it out of the park again. So the answer is yes. Baseball is more exciting with steroids. Baseball was better with steroids. It didn't, after they really started cracking down on it, people don't watch baseball like they did during these times. And like I just said, most of the players are getting it anyways, right? They're finding ways to use it and avoid the testing.
Mm-hmm.
So to think that steroids aren't in sports right now is kind of ridiculous. And I don't think that it's a bad thing. I mean, if everybody's on the same playing field. Right?
Yeah.
In some sense, you want to go see professional sports. You want to see people do superhuman things, right? Like I don't want to see somebody go out there and just kind of do something that I could almost do if I worked out. You want to see superhuman things, and steroids can be used safely. Like they unequivocally, no doubt about it, they're not necessarily dangerous, and they can be used safely. And if you can use them safely and it increase your performance, then there's no reason not to do that. I think it's just the idea is stigmatized, but it shouldn't be.
Right. A biohacking question for you. What's a single hormone imbalance you think that is destroying ambition in men?
Yeah, I mean, it would be testosterone. So again, there's studies that prove endocrine disruptors that we've absolutely proven that testosterone levels have been dropping since the 19 probably 60s and 70s, right? If like men have half the level of testosterone that they had in 1970.
Mm-hmm.
So there are endocrine disruptors. It's in our environment. It's the BPAs, the phthalates, the pesticides, the herbicides. It's in the food you eat, the water you drink, the soaps you use. It's even in the soaps. The ink on receipts is a known endocrine disruptor. It's everywhere, and you can't avoid it. So people's testosterone levels are dropping, and hypogonadism, symptoms of low testosterone, is pervasive, much more than people understand.
Right. And what do you think about peptides? Are they considered the next level testosterone and men?
So yeah, peptides are, again, people need the base foundational hormones. You need to have those optimized and get them in the range. Once you have that, then these peptides can be synergistic. If you have low hormones and you take peptides, the peptides aren't going to really do much because the hormones are the foundational signals. They're metabolic signals. They're neurochemical signals. They're foundational for everything.
Right.
So low hormones, nothing will really help. And part of the problem is a lot of our current medications are to treat symptoms of low testosterone. SSRIs, depression medications, that's a symptom of low hormones. If you get your hormones optimized, most people don't need depression medications anymore. Aches and pains all over your body. A lot of it, hormones can fix that through they're systemically anti-inflammatory, and estrogen helps synovial fluid, it helps joints, right? So a lot of pains and aches and pains can go away. Metabolic disorder, diabetes, testosterone helps diabetes. It can reverse diabetes. Obesity, like we're talking about metabolic disorder, and hormones change your metabolism, change energy pathways, and they can reverse obesity too. So all the problems that come with obesity. So it improves cardiovascular disease. The number one cause of death in the United States is cardiovascular disease. We can reverse that with hormones. Right? So, I mean, we're talking about improving the number one cause of death. It's like, but once we build that foundation, now the peptides are more effective. They're synergistic. Right. And now we can really help ourselves even further with a lot of these peptides. Many of the peptides are signals, right? They're signals for your body to do certain things. So things like things like MOTC, or they're signals for your to clean up each individual cell so that the mitochondria work better, and the mitochondria help the cell function better. They
Right.
help each cell function. So every single cell in our body has a purpose for the greater body.
Right.
So every single cell needs to function well for the whole body to function well. So a lot of these peptides just go into your cells and help each individual cell work better. Usually through MATC, SLUP. Even NAD is not a peptide, but NAD helps your mitochondria work better, so each cell can actually function better. Things like the Ozempic or Mounjaro, those are peptides that are signals for your body to just do certain things with your metabolism, either reduce appetite, suppress appetite, or actually drive metabolism. Right?
These days, Ozempic is used by almost every celebrity and regular people now.
Wh-
What are your thoughts on that? The
Yeah,
usage of
so
Ozempic.
I mean, it's honestly a miracle. They're miracle drugs, right? So when we think of a miracle drug, you think of, oh, they create this drug that very quickly positively benefits the entire world in some way, right? And that's exactly what these drugs have done. I think there's a nuanced way that they should be used, and I think that people aren't using them exactly correctly how they should be, but they are significantly reversing metabolic disorder. People are reducing their obesity, reducing metabolic disorder throughout the entire world. Hundreds of millions of people are now healthier because they're not suffering from metabolic disorder and suffering from risk of cardiovascular disease. Like, it's really done a great job of reversing obesity throughout the entire world, right? Now, again, I think that there's better ways. These can be more synergistic with again, if we get your hormones right first, and well, it doesn't have to be first, at the same time, and use these medications. The problem with like Ozempic or Mounjaro is that if you use these and one of the reasons, there's a few reasons why people become obese in the first place, right? And that's lifestyle, but also hormone deficiency. Hormones are metabolic signals. When your testosterone is low, your body goes into what's called a catabolic state, where you'll actually use your own muscle mass as a primary source of energy over your fat stores. So that's why a lot of people take Ozempic and they lose weight, but they're what we call skinny fat, and they don't look good because you're burning fat, but also mostly muscle. Right? Muscle is important for metabolism, energy, sense of well-being. These hormones are important for sense of well-being. So if you stop using the Ozempic or the Mounjaro and you're in a catabolic state, you're just going to put the weight right back on. We haven't fixed the root of the problem. Right? We've just covered up your appetite, so that we've covered up kind of a symptom of obesity, right? If we get your hormones in order, you're in what we call an anabolic state, which means you're preserving muscle mass. Your body's switching to using fat stores as a primary source of energy. Now you can lose weight. You can also use Ozempic. You can lose mostly fat. And now when you come off the Ozempic, your metabolism's fixed. You feel good, you're energetic, and everything is better. So now that you can stay off, you won't have to continually always use the Ozempic. You can come off of it and keep the weight off, because now your metabolism and energy pathways are better. So I think there's better ways to use it than the way it's currently being used, but it certainly is. They're miracle drugs in terms of worldwide, hundreds of millions of people are now at less risk of cardiovascular disease.
Right. That's a lovely tip for people who are using it or who are thinking about using it. That's a wonderful tip. And I think that calls for another episode, I guess, for discussing more in detail about all these hormones and how can we use it and what kind of benefits are there actually underlying it, which probably not many people know about.
Yeah.
Because it is a very controlled environment where we live in, where we understand it only from news, perhaps. It doesn't really make sense. I have got just 2 or 3 very basic questions from you, like one word or one sentence kind of questions for you. One of them is, when you have lost millions and you're used to making wealth, what is that lesson that you would like to give to our viewers, to founders, about wealth building?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I would say motivation, perseverance, but also my business partner has always said, "Turn square corners," which means don't take shortcuts, right? So it's important to be very motivated, work hard. It's gonna be the hardest work you've ever done in your entire life, but if you do it right and stay with it, then it'll be worth it in the end. And do everything the right way. Don't turn square corners, as my partner always says.
Beautiful, beautiful. Another question regarding your time in prison. How did you manage to stay grounded and perhaps, in fact, even manage your ego while being in prison? And how did you save yourself really to have that kind of a mindset to, lead a life like you're leading right now?
Well, that's a great question too. I think, I don't know if it's really an ego thing. Like, when you go to prison, you feel like the lowest of the low, and everything is kind of ripped from you. And while you're in prison, you actually don't think, especially if you have years and years to do, you actually don't think about life outside, because it's actually painful, and it's painful, and you don't see an end because you have so long, right? And you don't. So it's kind of actually more like painful to think about it. So, I mean, but you do kind of have a grasp of, I'm going to need to do these things someday. For someday, this will all pay off, right? So what you do when you're in prison is you just get in this routine, and you just do the same routine every day, that is facilitated by your environment. And in my routine, I just put doing work on building a business. And you don't even really think about what it's going to look like or the future too much, but just, I need to do this work. And I think, like, and your ego's smashed because you're in prison, and you don't even know if you're ever going to be able to make it out, or what it's going to look like, or if you're ever going to be able to do anything again. So you just focus on the now. What do I have to do now? And you just form this routine and just do it over and over again every day.
What's that one book that you would recommend for everybody to read?
Oh, geez, that's a great question. You know what? I think it's Black Swan by Nassim Taleb. It made me look at everything differently. The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb. It's just you look at the world differently when you read that book. And I think I use what I learned from that book in everything I do.
Right.
It was a fantastic book. Have you read it?
No, I haven't, but I've heard a lot, and I'm going to definitely go through it now.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's just, you just look at the world differently.
Yes, it's beautiful. This has been a beautiful podcast so far, and I think just to conclude it, I would like to ask you one last question. It's on rebuilding trust, especially when you have seen it all, done it all, lost it all.
Mm-hmm.
Rebuilding trust. Perhaps that's where you are. Perhaps you've done it already. I don't know. So you have to tell us.
You mean rebuilding trust with...
If you're in your environment again, when you have come from certain downfalls, and, what's your one tip that, okay, this is the way you can possibly start gaining trust again?
Yeah, I guess it's a great question too. I guess it's essentially brand building, right? So it has to do with proving yourself, following through with promises that you've made, providing these good services. I mean, fortunately for me, like my story actually did make people trust me, because like I said, I could. So I would say this: spin your story so that you can say, hey, look, I made this mistake, but I learned from it.
Right.
And instead of just, so that's a major thing that I did, that I would say, instead of just, getting out of prison and curling up in a fetal position in the corner of the room and saying, oh, I did this wrong thing. Address that you did something wrong. Admit that I'm accountable for those actions, and I am accountable for the actions. But then present to people what you learned from that and why you're a better person today, and how and a lot of people resonate with that. They resonate with the second chance. They resonate with the I made a mistake. Here's what I learned. This is why I'm going to do it better this time. And people resonate with that. And surprisingly, a lot of people are willing to overlook your past.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I think it's not only about Brad Midley, it's also about being authentic through and through.
Yeah.
Telling your story very authentically. I think that really helps.
Yeah, I totally agreed.
Yes, yes. So it's been lovely, Ryan, talking to you, and thank you so much for your time today. We've had some great nuggets from you, and your experience has been just amazing. So all the best, all the very best to you for your future endeavors, and
Great.
hope to have you soon on podcast.
Yeah. We could do another one where we do talk about how to actually utilize all these hormones and peptides together synergistically. But it has been you asked some fantastic questions, and I really appreciate the thought that you put into this. So this was a lot of fun, and it was great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you so much for your time today.